Part 1. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the bright swirl of stars and busy trade lanes, the Galactic Council met inside a great floating chamber. The chamber hung in space near a calm planet called Varellis Prime. It was made of smooth crystal that glowed softly in the dark. Inside, beings from over 200 different worlds sat in tall curved seats. Some had many eyes, others had skin like stone or wings like glass. They all spoke different languages, but machines near their heads turned every word into sounds everyone could understand. The council had kept peace for a long time. They solved fights with talks, not weapons. They believed that no one race should rule the others. Earth had only joined them a few years ago, and even then, only as an observer. Humans were new to space travel. They had just learned how to jump between stars when most other races had been doing it for thousands of years. To the council, humans were loud, emotional, and messy. They argued among themselves, built too many cities, and still used old-fashioned money. No one thought Earth would ever be a problem. Then, without warning, a signal came from the Sol system, the home of Earth. It was not a normal message. It did not come through the usual channels. Instead, it pulsed through deep space like a heartbeat, strong and clear. Every ship, every station, every listening post in the sector heard it at the same time. The words were simple. All fleets, stand down. Earth is not your target. But that was not the strange part. Right after the message, something else happened. Huge bursts of energy lit up the edges of known space, not from outside, but from inside the Sol system. Ships that had been watching Earth from a distance, scouts from the Cathari, the Orlan, the Helix Enclave, suddenly lost contact. Their signals vanished. Then new readings flooded the Council's screens. Warships, hundreds of them, silent, fast, moving in perfect formation. And they were coming from Earth. Counselor Lyra Vaughn of the Cathari Collective sat very still. Her long fingers gripped the arms of her seat. Her eyes, which shimmered like oil on water, widened. She leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "They're attacking Earth?" High Arbiter Zen of the Orlan Concord turned slowly. His face was calm, but his voice shook. "No," he said. "Earth is attacking everyone." On Earth, far below the stars, in a hidden place under the Pacific Ocean, a man named Daniel Brooks stood in a dim room filled with soft blue light. He wore a plain gray uniform with no medals, no rank pins. On a wall in front of him, a map of the solar system glowed. Tiny red dots moved near Mars, Jupiter, and the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Each dot was an alien ship, and each one was now being marked with a small white ring, meaning it had been locked onto. Beside him, a woman named Kara Ellis watched a different screen. Her dark hair was pulled back, her eyes sharp and focused. She tapped a few keys and numbers scrolled fast. "The network's live," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Humanity's defense grid is online." They were not smiling. They were not celebrating. What they had just done was not an act of pride. It was an act of survival. For years, Earth had been watched, studied, judged. After humans built their first warp drive, the galaxy took notice. At first, they were curious. Then they became nervous. Humans asked too many questions. They built too fast. They refused to sign some of the Council's oldest laws, especially the ones that said weaker worlds must obey stronger ones. Earth said no. They said every world should choose its own path. That made enemies. Some of those enemies had sent ships to watch Earth. Others had sent spies. A few had even tried small attacks, raiding mining stations near Mars, cutting off supply lines to the moon. Earth had complained to the Council, but nothing changed. The Council said it was complicated. They said Earth needed to be patient, but patience runs out. Daniel had been part of a secret project for 10 years. It had no official name, but those who worked on it called it Aegis, the old word for shield. It was not a weapon in the normal sense. It did not fire lasers or missiles. Instead, it used something far stranger. Machines that could change the rules of space itself just for a moment. A ship caught in its field would not explode. It would simply stop being a ship. Its atoms would be gently pulled apart and turned into harmless gas. The crew would be safe, floating in escape pods, confused but alive. The goal was never to hurt. It was to stop harm before it started. Now, the first wave of alien ships had entered what Earth called the Quiet Zone, a bubble around the solar system where no outside military force was allowed. Earth had warned them. They had not listened. So Aegis woke up. Back on Mars Colony Theta, A young engineer named Leo Grant stood in a small control room. He was not part of the military. He fixed air filters and water pumps, but he had friends on Phobos Station, and when the news came through, he ran to the main screen. He saw the feed from the edge of the system. One moment, there were 5 Cathari warships. The next, they were gone. Only a faint cloud of hydrogen remained, drifting in the void. They didn't fire a shot, Leo said, his voice barely above a whisper. They just unwrote them. No one on Mars knew what to do. Some were scared. Some were angry, but most were just stunned. Earth had always seemed small in the grand galaxy. Now it looked like the most powerful place in existence. At the same time, on the council chamber, panic began to spread. Voices rose. Some members shouted that Earth must be destroyed before it grew stronger. Others demanded to speak to Earth's ambassador. But Earth's last ambassador had quit 6 months ago, after the council refused to punish the Varathi for attacking a peaceful research base on Europa. Since then, Earth had sent no one. Now humanity was speaking in a new language. Not words, actions. Daniel Brooks looked at Kara. "Do you think they understand yet?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. She watched as another alien ship, this one from the Orlan fleet, tried to retreat. Aegis let it go. Only the ones that fired first were stopped. "They'll understand soon," she said. "Because we're not the monsters they thought we were. We're the ones who finally said no." Outside the hidden base, the ocean pressed against the walls. Far above, in the black sky, Earth turned quietly on its axis. And in the distance, the stars watched, silent, waiting, and now, for the first time in centuries, afraid. Part 2. In the days that followed the first activation of the Aegis network, silence fell over the outer edges of the Sol system. Not the kind of silence that means peace, but the heavy quiet that comes after something powerful has spoken. Alien ships that had once circled Earth like vultures now kept their distance. Some fled back to their homeworlds. Others simply powered down and waited, unsure what to do next. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Emergency meetings ran for hours without agreement. Some members wanted to send a full armada to crush Earth before it grew stronger. Others argued that Earth had not actually attacked anyone. It had only disabled ships that entered its space with weapons ready. But fear is louder than reason, and fear was spreading fast. No one understood how Earth had built such a defense. Human technology, according to every report, was still decades behind the rest of the galaxy. They used basic fusion drives, simple AI, and metal hulls that rusted in space if not treated. Yet the Aegis system moved faster than thought, struck without sound, and left no wreckage. Only empty space and confused crews floating in life pods. On Mars Colony Theta, Leo Grant couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the footage from Phobos Station. 5 warships gone in less than a second. No explosions, no fire. Just a ripple in space like heat rising off desert sand, and then nothing. He asked his supervisor if Earth had always had this power. The supervisor just shook his head and said, "If they did, they never told us." Meanwhile, deep in the asteroid belt, a Cathari scout ship drifted. Its captain, Vex Torin, sat alone in the dark cockpit. His ship's weapons were offline. His engines were cold. He had watched his entire squadron vanish one by one as they pushed past the warning line Earth had sent out. He had not fired. He had only watched. And because of that, Aegis had spared him. Now he stared at the pale blue dot in the distance, Earth, and wondered what kind of species could build a shield that punished only the guilty. Back on Earth, in the hidden command center beneath the Pacific, Daniel Brooks reviewed the logs. Every action taken by Aegis had been recorded. Every ship neutralized had first locked weapons on a human colony or fired a warning shot across a civilian transport. Not one innocent vessel had been touched. Even a medical frigate from the Cygnus Accord, which had strayed too close while treating refugees from a nearby conflict, had been gently guided away by a soft energy field, no harm done. Kara Ellis stood beside him, arms crossed. "They're calling us monsters on the galactic feeds," she said. "Saying we erased their ships like they were bugs." Daniel didn't look up. Let them talk. Truth takes time, but time was running short. Rumors spread that 3 major powers, the Orlan Concord, the Helix Enclave, and the Varathi Hegemony, were gathering fleets at the edge of known space. They claimed it was for peacekeeping, but their ships carried planet cracker missiles and gravity bombs. They were not coming to talk. What no one in the galaxy knew was that Aegis was not a fleet in the normal sense. It had no captains, no crews, no bases. The warships seen on scanners were illusions, holographic projections created to confuse enemies. The real power came from thousands of tiny devices hidden in asteroids, old satellites, and even space junk. These devices, no bigger than a human hand, worked together like a single mind. They could bend space, shift matter, and rewrite local physics for a few seconds at a time. They were not built by human hands alone. They were grown, using biometal and quantum code passed down through generations in secret. The truth was, humanity had not invented Aegis. They had awakened it centuries ago. When humans still thought the Earth was flat, their ancestors had buried the first seeds of this system in the moon's crust. They left instructions in caves, in ocean trenches, in the roots of ancient trees. The knowledge was hidden in myths, in songs, in children's games. Only when Earth faced true extinction would the pieces come together. And now they had. On Luna's far side, a team of Earth scientists worked in a newly uncovered vault. The walls were smooth, black, and covered in symbols that looked like old human writing, but older than any known language. One scientist, a quiet man named Paul Reyes, traced a symbol with his finger. It meant balance, another meant memory, a third meant awakening. They knew this day would come, Paul whispered. Back in the council chamber, High Arbiter Zen stood before the full assembly. His voice, usually calm, now carried urgency. "We assumed Earth was weak because they were young," he said. "But what if youth is not weakness? What if it is clarity? They have not forgotten what war costs. They still bleed when cut. They still cry when they lose someone. Maybe that is why they built a shield that does not kill, but corrects." Counselor Lyra Vaughn listened, her thoughts racing. She remembered how her own people had once used planet killers during the Dust Wars, how they had justified it as necessary. Earth had not done that. Earth had shown restraint even while defending itself. Then a new alert flashed across every screen in the chamber. A Varathi battle group had crossed into the Sol exclusion zone. They fired first, 3 plasma torpedoes aimed at a mining outpost near Ceres. Before the torpedoes traveled 100 kilometers, they unraveled into light. The Varathi ships tried to retreat, but it was too late. One by one, they dissolved into clouds of harmless particles. Their crews were found minutes later in escape pods, unharmed, staring at Earth with wide eyes. No one cheered on Earth. There was no victory parade. Only quiet relief that no one had died. In Geneva, President Elena Ruiz met with her advisors. "We cannot hide this forever," she said. "The galaxy thinks we're hiding weapons, but we're not hiding weapons. We're hiding mercy." She ordered the release of a public message. Not a threat, not a boast. Just a simple truth. Earth does not seek war, but we will not be prey. That night on a small farm in Iowa, a boy named Tommy looked up at the stars. He had heard the news. He didn't understand all of it. But he knew one thing: Earth was safe. And for the first time in a long time, the stars didn't feel so cold. Far away in the dark between galaxies, something ancient stirred. It had waited a very long time, and now it watched with something close to hope. Part 3. The silence after the Varathi attack did not last long. Within days, the galaxy buzzed with new theories. Some said Earth had made a deal with a forgotten god race. Others claimed humans had stolen ancient tech from a dead world. A few even whispered that Earth was not human at all, that it was a trap set by something older than stars. But none of them knew the truth. And the truth was buried deeper than anyone imagined. Counselor Lyra Vaughn could not sleep. She replayed the footage of the Varathi ships vanishing over and over. It was not destruction. It was removal. Like wiping dust from a table. She asked her science team to analyze every bit of data from the event. They found something strange. The energy signature did not match any known weapon. It matched no engine, no shield, no natural phenomenon. It was as if space itself had been asked to forget those ships ever existed. She made a decision. Without telling the full council, she sent a small unmarked probe toward Earth's moon, not to spy, to search. Her team had studied old human myths, stories of gods walking among men, of cities falling from the sky, of a great flood that reset the world. Most dismissed them as fairy tales. But Lyra wondered, what if they were memories? The probe slipped past Earth's defenses unnoticed. Aegis let it pass because it carried no weapons, no scanners, only a simple camera and a soil sampler. It landed softly on the far side of the moon, in a crater humans called Chilkovsky. There, beneath layers of dust untouched for millions of years, it found a door, not a metal hatch. Not a cave, a smooth black archway built into the rock. It hummed with a low tone that matched the frequency of the original Aegis signal. The probe sent back images. Inside the archway was a chamber, and on the walls were carvings, not alien, not machine-made, but clearly human. Or something very like human. Lyra stared at the images in her private chamber. Her hands trembled. One carving showed a tall being placing a seed into the soil of a young planet. Another showed that same being watching over cities rising from forest. A third showed war, great fires, broken stars, and a final act of sacrifice. At the bottom of every image was the same symbol, a circle with a single line through it. Balance, she called High Arbiter Zen. We were wrong about them, she said. Humans are not newcomers. They are keepers. On Earth, Daniel Brooks stood in a cold room deep beneath Geneva. The walls were lined with old servers, paper files, and stone tablets covered in symbols no living person could fully read. For weeks, teams of historians, linguists, and physicists had worked nonstop, trying to piece together what Aegis really was. Now they had an answer. Kara Ellis handed him a thin sheet of metal. It had been pulled from a vault under the Giza Plateau. This isn't just a record, she said. It's a key. It explains why Aegis only acts when someone attacks first. It's not a weapon. It's a law. The truth was this. Humanity did not evolve on Earth. Long ago, a peaceful species, tall, wise, and gentle, had traveled the galaxy seeding life on empty worlds. They did not conquer. They nurtured. They gave each world a chance to grow on its own. But one day, a war broke out among their own kind. A faction wanted to control the seeded worlds, to shape them into weapons. The peaceful ones refused. In the end, they destroyed their own civilization to stop the war. But before they vanished, they left one last gift. Earth. Earth was not just a planet. It was a sanctuary, a final experiment. They placed their own children there, beings who looked like them but were made to forget their origins. Over time, those children became humans. They forgot the stars. They forgot the old laws. But deep in their bones, in their dreams, in their stories, the memory remained. Aegis was not built by modern humans. It was built by their ancestors, and it was designed to wake up only when the galaxy forgot mercy. Daniel felt a chill. We weren't meant to rule, he said aloud. We were meant to remember. In Geneva, President Elena Ruiz met with the leaders of every nation. She showed them the translated texts. She told them the story of their true origin. Some wept, some refused to believe, but all agreed on one thing. Earth could not keep this secret any longer. Meanwhile, on Mars, Leo Grant helped repair a damaged comms array. As he worked, he overheard a message from Earth. It was not encrypted. It was meant for everyone. The voice was calm, clear, and human. We are not your enemy. We are your reminder. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the choice to protect life even when it is hard. The message spread fast. Even alien ships on the edge of the system picked it up. On the Cathari scout ship, Captain Vex Torin listened. For the first time, he did not feel fear. He felt shame. His people had raided weaker worlds for resources. They had called it survival. But Earth had shown another way. Back in the council chamber, Lyra Vaughn stood before the full assembly. She played the probe's footage. She showed the carvings. She spoke not as a politician, but as a student. We thought humans were primitive because they cried, because they loved too loudly, because they fought among themselves. But maybe that is their strength. They have not forgotten what it means to be alive. High Arbiter Zen nodded slowly. Then we must ask ourselves, have we? That night, Earth's skies were clear. In a small town in Texas, a girl named Mia looked up and saw a shooting star. She made a wish, not for toys or candy, but for peace. She did not know why. But somewhere deep inside she remembered, and far away in the quiet dark the old architects of life watched. Their children were finally waking up. Part 4. The message from Earth changed everything. It did not shout. It did not threaten. It simply spoke the truth, and that truth cut through the noise of fear like sunlight through fog. Across the galaxy, beings who had never questioned their leaders began to wonder. Had their wars been just? Had their conquests been necessary? Or had they simply forgotten how to be kind? In the council chamber, the air felt different. The usual tension was gone. Instead, there was a quiet hum of thought. Counselor Lyra Vaughn stood at the center of the room, her hands empty, her voice calm. She no longer spoke as a representative of the Cathari collective, but as someone who had seen something deeper. She told them about the vault on the moon. She showed them the carvings. She explained that Earth was not a new power rising, it was an old promise returning. High Arbiter Zen listened without interrupting. When she finished, he rose slowly. His people, the Orlan, had once prided themselves on honor. But over centuries, honor had turned into pride and pride into control. They had led peacekeeping fleets that punished small worlds for disorder. Now he saw the truth. They had not kept peace. They had kept power. We judged Earth by our own broken rules, Zen said, but they answered with something we lost long ago, mercy. He turned to the assembly. I move that the Council grant Earth full membership, not as a guest, but as a guide. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some agreed. Others hesitated. But no one shouted. No one called for war. The fear was still there, but it was now mixed with something new. Respect. On Earth, life went on. Children went to school. Farmers planted crops. Workers fixed roads. But everyone felt it, the shift in the air. The world was no longer just a planet. It was a symbol. And with that came weight. In the hidden command center under the Pacific, Daniel Brooks watched as the Aegis network powered down. One by one, the tiny devices in space returned to sleep. Their job was done for now. Kara Ellis stood beside him, her eyes on a screen showing alien ships slowly turning away from the Sol system. They're leaving, she said. Not all of them, Daniel replied. Some are staying to watch, to learn, and they were. A small Orlan science vessel had requested permission to orbit Mars. A Cathari cultural envoy asked to visit the ruins of ancient Egypt. Even the Varathi, still shaken, sent a quiet message. We wish to understand. President Elena Ruiz approved every request. She knew this was the real test. Not whether Earth could defend itself, but whether it could teach others to do the same without violence. In Geneva, a new team formed. Not soldiers, not spies, teachers, doctors, engineers, and poets. They would be Earth's first true ambassadors. Among them was Leo Grant from Mars Colony Theta. He had never left the Red Planet before, but when asked to join, he said yes, without thinking. If Earth can show the galaxy how to stop fighting, he told his friends, then I want to help them show it. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. Some members still feared Earth's power. They argued that Aegis could be turned against them at any moment. But Lyra Vaughn had an answer. If they wanted to rule, they already would have, she said. Instead, they shut it off. They chose trust over control. Isn't that what we claim to believe in? Zen nodded. Then he did something no High Arbiter had done in 500 years. He stepped down from his seat and walked to the center of the floor. He placed a small crystal on the ground, a data stone containing every military action the Orlan Concord had taken in the last 1,000 years. Let Earth review us, he said. Let them see our mistakes, and if they find injustice, let them correct it. Silence filled the room. Then one by one, other council members followed. The Cathari offered their war logs. The Helix Enclave shared their trade records. Even the Varathi, after a long pause, sent a file marked Truth. On Earth, historians and ethicists began to study the files. They found many good deeds, rescues, aid missions, peace treaties. But they also found dark pages, secret bombings, forced relocations, silenced voices. When the report was finished, Earth did not condemn. They simply sent back a single line. We see you. Now will you change? That question echoed across 100 worlds. In a small village in Kenya, a boy named Jomo helped his grandmother carry water. She told him stories of the old days when people shared everything. The stars are listening now, she said. So we must be good. In Tokyo, a scientist named Hiro Tanaka worked late into the night. He was not building a weapon. He was designing a machine that could clean ocean plastic using solar energy. He hoped to share the plans with every world that asked. And in the quiet of space, the Aegis devices slept, but not deeply. They waited, ready to wake if cruelty returned. But for now, hope was enough, the council voted. Unanimously, they granted Earth full membership. More than that, they asked Earth to lead a new committee, one focused not on law but on conscience. Its name would be simple, the Balance Council. Daniel Brooks was chosen to speak for Earth at the first meeting. He did not wear a uniform. He wore a plain shirt and jeans. When he stood before the gathered leaders, he did not speak of power or victory. He spoke of a child on Earth who shared her lunch with a stranger, of a farmer who gave his last seeds to a neighbor after a storm, of a song sung in the dark to calm a crying baby. "We are not special," he said. "We are just trying." And maybe that is enough. No one clapped, but many bowed their heads. And in that moment, the galaxy felt a little less cold. Far away in the deep dark between stars, something ancient sighed, not in sadness, but in relief. The lesson had finally been remembered. Part 5. 1 year after the Aegis Network first woke, the Galactic Council met again in its crystal chamber near Varelli's Prime. But this time the mood was different. There was no fear in the air, no tension in the voices. The beings who filled the seats did not look at each other with suspicion. They looked with curiosity, with hope, and sometimes with quiet shame. At the center of the chamber stood two humans, Daniel Brooks and Kara Ellis. They wore no uniforms, no badges of rank, just simple clothes, dark pants, soft shirts, shoes worn from walking real ground. They carried no weapons, only small data crystals in their hands glowing faintly with light. Around them, the council watched. Not in terror as they once had, but in awe. They had seen what Earth could do. More importantly, they had seen what Earth chose not to do. Power had been offered, and Earth had set it down gently like a parent returning a toy to a child who was not ready. Daniel stepped forward first. His voice was calm, not loud, but it filled the room. "We are not here to rule," he said. "We are here to remind." He held up his crystal. Inside it was not a threat, not a demand, but a gift. It held Earth's full history, every war, every mistake, every act of kindness. The burning of libraries, the healing of wounds, the songs sung in dark times, the hands that reached out across borders. It held the truth, raw and unpolished. Kara spoke next. "The Aegis system was never ours to keep," she said. "It was a lesson left behind by those who came before us. They saw what happens when power forgets mercy. They built a shield not to protect one world, but to protect the idea that all life matters." She placed her crystal on the central pedestal. "This contains the Aegis protocols. Not how to build it, but why it exists. You may study it. You may share it. But remember, its power only works when used with care. It answers not to strength, but to justice." No one moved for a long moment. Then High Arbiter Zen rose. He walked slowly to the pedestal and placed his hand over the crystals. "We accept this not as a weapon," he said, "but as a mirror." After that, the meeting changed. It was no longer about laws or borders. It became a conversation. A Cathari elder spoke of how her people had once lived in harmony with the storms of their homeworld, before they learned to control them, and lost their songs. A young Helix engineer asked how Earth taught children to share when resources were scarce. A Varathi delegate, his voice low with regret, admitted his people had used fear to hold their empire together, and now they did not know how to let go. Daniel and Kara listened. They did not have all the answers, but they offered what they could: stories, ideas, questions. They spoke of community gardens in Detroit, of peace circles in Nairobi, of elders teaching the young to listen before speaking. Small things, human things, but in that room they felt huge. Later that day, the Aegis fleet, what little remained visible, began to fade. The ghost ships that had patrolled the edges of the Sol system dissolved into clouds of dust and light. Their work was done. The galaxy was watching now, not with weapons ready, but with open eyes. On Earth, people gathered in parks, in town squares, on rooftops. They did not celebrate with fireworks or parades. They sat quietly looking up at the stars. In a village in Peru, an old woman lit a candle and whispered thanks to the sky. In Oslo, a group of students planted trees in a new peace garden. In Mumbai, a street musician played a song about home. Not just one home, but all of them. Back on Mars, Leo Grant stood on the observation deck of Colony Theta. He watched as the first Orlan cultural ship landed gently on the red soil. Its crew stepped out not in armor, but in soft robes. They carried books, not guns. Leo smiled. He remembered when he thought Earth was small. Now he knew it was the biggest thing in the galaxy. In Geneva, President Elena Ruiz received a message from the council. It was short. Just 2 words. "Thank you." She did not reply. She did not need to. The work spoke for itself. As the days passed, changes began to ripple across the stars. The Orlan Conquered canceled 3 planned military expansions. The Cathari opened their archives to all member worlds. The Varathi released prisoners from silent labor camps and began rebuilding what they had broken. It was not perfect. It would take time. But it was a start. And Earth? Earth went back to being Earth. Children laughed. Rain fell. Bees buzzed in flowers. But now, when humans looked up at night, they knew they were not alone in trying to be better. In the deep quiet between galaxies, where time moves like slow breath, something ancient stirred one last time. It had waited millions of years for its children to remember who they were. Now they had. And so with a sigh like wind through trees it faded, not gone, but at peace. The stars turned. The planet spun. And for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy felt like a home.